I'm going to break down the top 3 most common myths around the idea of posture and potentially how you can think about it in a different perspective to give you better results. Many people take a very superficial approach to posture and trying to improve it. They look at something that's short and tight and they say, well, that needs to be stretched. And they look at things that could potentially be elongated and say, well, that needs to be activated. But it's this mindset that's leading people to poor results in the first place. People are looking at posture as a muscular problem and not necessarily a center of mass problem. They look at someone with, for example, an anterior pelvic tilt and say, okay, this person has a tight low back and their abs are weak, so I need to stretch this out and activate that so that way I become more stacked. But that's not the reason why these muscles are tight. The muscles are tight because of the position of the skeleton in the first place. So if I'm in this skeletal position, simply trying to stretch myself out of it isn't going to give my body a reason to genuinely change how it's organizing its center of mass. If you look at all of these different postures, they're all trying to accomplish the same exact thing, which is keep an even center of mass down the midline of the body. They're all trying to do that. And if you don't have the ability to genuinely maintain an even center of mass through more neutral spine curves, then you're going to seek a compensatory strategy to balance yourself out against gravity. So the anterior pelvic tilt isn't the problem. The problem is that you're so far forward within your center of mass that you're going to tighten stuff up so that way you don't fall forward, which oftentimes involves leaning back within your upper body. So the problem isn't a tight low back pushing your pelvis forward, it's your low back is tight because your pelvis is pushed forward. This means that in order to restore a more neutral center of mass, we need to educate our body in how to create that better stack and feel comfortable in that position and slowly progress through exercises that progressively get us more upright against gravity. But we gotta start simple. If you're looking for a resource for that, you can check out this video and I will link it down below as well. And that's going to feed into the second point, which is stretching and activating muscles is the ultimate surface level approach that isn't often going to get a change that's meaningful. Let's go to an example with someone that has a depressed sternum. They have rounded forward shoulders, probably forward head posture. In this case, if I just simply stretch out my pecs and I try to open up the front side of my body and do something to activate the back side, my upper back muscles, that in theory should help me even myself out, right? Not necessarily if the problem has to do with why my joints are in this position in the first place. And the issue is an inability to control the center of mass. But there is also another potential variable, which I talk about in a lot of my other content, and that is how we breathe, and our ability to breathe is going to dictate what happens here at the upper body and rib cage. Now, your body is very, very subconsciously aware of how effectively and efficiently you can breathe. Many people lack the ability to use their diaphragm and other muscles of inhalation optimally, or to the extent that is realistically necessary for them. So they're going to seek a compensatory strategy to create a better inhalation strategy. And usually that involves them pushing their head forward to a certain extent, and that's going to depress the rib cage and round the shoulders forward naturally. Now, this is usually a strategy to create a better opening of the airway. So if we can improve our respiration strategy, our ability to use our diaphragm and keep our rib cage and pelvis stacked on top of each other better, that should over time allow us to improve our posture naturally and get better long-term results doing so. And the third thing is that people will allude to, or they'll give you the impression that posture is associated with pain, and it is the reason why you have pain. There are a lot of people that have quote unquote pretty bad posture, but they're not in pain whatsoever. Likewise, there's people that we would think have good posture, but they're in a ton of pain all the time. So posture is not representative of pain because the body is so good at putting you in a position that it deems safe and efficient based off of the constraints of your body. Now, based off of a ton of different factors like your age, your lifestyle, what you do for work, how you exercise or train, different injuries in the past, your body's aware of all these different things, and it's going to put you in a posture that it deems safe and efficient for you in that moment. However, posture is not useless to look at. It gives us a really good idea of how someone is managing their center of gravity, and also it is representative of movement limitations. So I don't think posture is inherently the problem, because the body, again, is smart and it is going to put us in a position that could be efficient. And that's not necessarily a a bad thing. But if you are in some, let's say, anterior pelvic tilt, then that is going to initially limit your ability of your hips to rotate in a certain way. If I move into this anterior pelvic tilt position, that means I'm going to bias my femurs towards more of an internally rotated position. That's going to block my external rotation. And that over time can lead to issues. However, you can also be so far forward in an anterior pelvic tilt, you're basically at end range of hip internal rotation, and you can't internally rotate more. So you're going to present with limited internal rotation. And internal rotation limitations have been associated with different types of low back pain and also knee injuries. So it's not necessarily the posture that's the problem, it's the movement limitations and whatever demands are being placed on your posture in either the short or long term that are going to create compensatory strategies, and that over time or acutely can lead to injury. So I hope that was helpful and it gave you an idea of why we're in the postures that we're in and why a lot of the common interventions don't actually make long-term progress for most people. That doesn't mean they're worthless. That doesn't mean that they're never going to work. It's just that for most people, you're not going to see usually the changes that you would expect because we're not addressing the root cause of the issue.